astonished Tifosi that he came back from the dead, racing barely 42 days after a priest attempted to usher him into the afterlife. His wounds bled. He had no eyelids and couldn't blink, so he could hardly see the track. And he was terrified. Enzo Ferrari was horrified by the publicity that surrounded a comeback that seemed beyond human endurance, but the fans descended on Monza in hordes, encouraged by an hysterical Italian press heaping superlatives on this astonishing hero. There was no heroic return in Lauda's mind, though. For him, there was simply no alternative. He disguised his fear behind the fireproof balaclava through which blood seeped, and clamped his red helmet firmly onto his raw skull. Now no one could see the fear, trace the trembling, and realise that Lauda was not just pitting his skill against the best, but probing the recesses of his mind where the darkest dread waited. A year later, he reclaimed his world championship for Ferrari. Lauda's first stab at an autobiography came in 1978 with For the Record, My Years with Ferrari, translated from the German into English by Diana Mosley, the mother of Max, who provided Lauda's first Formula One cars from his March factory, and later became the controversial president of the Fédération Internationale de l'Automobile, the FIA, which governed Formula One. His second and last autobiography, To Hell and Back, was published in 1986 after his final retirement, and it was typically Niki, to the point with no frills and fancies, no doubt dictated at breakneck speed. It covers the years from his childhood to his accident and the battle for the 1976 title with the charismatic James Hunt, and then his departure from Formula One and motor racing as a 3-times world champion and one of the most successful drivers in the sport, starting at the bottom with BRM and March, then Ferrari, before moving to the Brabham team run by Bernie Ecclestone, and finally McLaren. But Lauda never updated the book, nor told the story of life after Formula One as an airline magnate, and then his extraordinary return to the track as chairman of the all-conquering Mercedes team that brought an astonishing 5 world championships for Lewis Hamilton, plus 1 more for Nico Rosberg in successive years. That was to be my job, and I've attempted to focus on the stories, events and anecdotes that would have been in his mind, which means that this book is part autobiography, part portrait of the man behind the mask of scars that became a trademark thanks to the Nurburgring. I had the privilege, as motor racing correspondent for the Times, to meet Lauda on many occasions at racetracks around the world, and there was one thing a journalist could rely on, that Niki would have an opinion on almost anything to do with motor racing. His opinions carried unique weight, though, because he had been there, done that, and got the scars to prove it. Lauda's image was of a bombastic, curt, driven, even impolite man, and he was all and none of those things. But the measure is that he was adored around the world, could charm even the grumpiest of associates, and became one of the most revered of countrymen in his homeland of Austria. John Hogan was the mastermind behind the Philip Morris Marlborough sponsorship that invested hundreds of millions of pounds in Formula One, including backing Lauda. According to him, Lauda was incredibly well-mannered, particularly to women. Hogan said, "He was always interested in people and put them at their ease. Women of all ages adored him. I think it was his upbringing because, despite his image, he was always courteous and polite." Lauda loved pranks and jokes and would be a fascinating dinner companion with anecdotes that ranged through a life that refused to bow to rules and regulations or respect for authority. Lauda simply didn't do rules, unless he could break them. He was his own man, struggling from the suffocating correctness of his privileged childhood to defy his family, who thought motor racing beneath their status in society, standing up to the fearsome Enzo Ferrari, who dominated Formula One, and then taking on an airline cartel. It was as if he needed life to be a battle against authority and convention. Hogan, who knew every driver and senior figure in Formula One from the early 1970s, including sponsoring and becoming close friends with James Hunt, put it simply. "You would have to call Niki a maverick. That's the best description," he said. Lauda loved a deal and could wring cash from even the tightest of fists to finance his motor racing career and airline businesses. He started life in Formula One with massive debts as he inveigled cash from sponsors persuaded by his assurances of instant success, and ended his life with a fortune estimated by some of almost